planned for our lovely Friday. Very excited about what is in store. Soon as the tubes connect themselves all across the fruited plain of the internet, we're going to go through a bit of a preview before we get into it. And so I see our friends on YouTube are joining us. Let's say hello to our friends on Locals. We've got Rumble is booting up. Shout out to our friends on X. It is a beautiful day, my friends. And today on this episode of Watching the Watchers Live, we've got a very special guest. And I want to introduce you to, in a minute, our friend Joseph Sweeney. And he wrote this book called Dangerous Injustice. And the universe is weird. We got connected. We decided we had to get something scheduled here, and we're doing it today. Now, this is going to be a conversation with the guy who wrote this book, and he is an ex-CIA lawyer, and he is highly involved in studying all of the same cases that we have studied here, in particular, Mar-a-Lago and some of the Biden shenanigans that we've covered with the Her Report. And so call it serendipity or whatever you want. We're here, we're talking through this. And so I want to show you a little bit more about him before we bring him on. We're also going to do an update on the J6 case because we'll poke around in some other topics. And of course, we want to see what you say about this when he does join us. But we also have a January 6th case update that is fresh out of the oven. This week, we have been waiting and salivating, essentially, to see what was going to be happening here because Jack Smith was promising us that he was going to be filing a big, we're calling it a book report, a opening brief that is 4 times the size of the standard opening brief that you would see in the DC circuit. And it feels like this has been submitted or is in the process of being submitted so that they can try Trump in the public docket, in paper, rather than in the court of law, which they're not going to be able to do before the election comes down the pike. So what we see here is a short docket update, just so we're apprised. We've been waiting for this 180-page massive filing. We're not going to see it, it looks like, anytime soon. And I was kind of two minds about this. I wasn't sure if Chutkan was going to want to rush this out so that the media would have a lot of time to salivate and chew on this, because as we know, they're going to make this a pseudo special counsel report where they're going to say that Jack Smith is an actual legitimate special counsel, and we'll hopefully get into that. But saying that this is in reality fact, when we know it's just allegations from, in our opinion, what we call a corrupt DOJ based on Jack Smith's history with us. So what came down is Jack submitted a motion to file the unredacted motion under seal, which means that big, massive monster document is going to just go to Chutkan only, not us. It's not going to be on the public docket. And Jack Smith submitted this motion. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but basically he's saying we need to seal this. We need to file this under seal so that we avoid harms and dangers and threats to witnesses and so on. And so this is the filing. He's saying that there will be some sensitive materials in there, and we expect it to be pretty juicy. We expect it to be as hard-hitting as they can make it because this is their last option before the clock runs out. So as we'll see in the motion, they say we've not redacted quotations or summaries. There will be sensitive materials. There are redacted citations that reveal non-public sources. In the appendix, we've also got some non-public sensitive materials in the appendix in their entirety. So the judge is going to be seeing a bunch of this and making decisions about what we can see in the public. Now, again, normally we're of the mind that we want to see everything, right? We want to see all the stuff. Like, why are they hiding redactions in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial? Why are they covering up stuff when we're going into the Proud Boys case or these other cases, when it's about the government covering up their corruption? But in this case, there's a little bit of a reverse incentive almost, because Jack Smith wants to publish the most useful propagandistic materials, the most salacious, the most red meaty pieces of juicy materials, whether they're true or not. He just wants to get it out before the election because I think he knows his case is basically dead on arrival thanks to the Supreme Court's immunity decision. So in this brief from Jack, he says, here's the legal background. There are these 5 factors that support my request that you seal this. And so it's pretty mechanical, the filing. What Chutkan has ultimately done is set some new deadlines. So again, we're asking ourselves, how quickly is this going to go? And will we see things early so that the media can salivate on it and just kind of grind the political world into it? Or is this going to be something that they drop later last minute? So it's really more of an October surprise. Surprise, right? October, second week, third week of October. Oh, then you get this big fat dossier that lands on everybody's desk in Washington, D.C. So you see, what we have now is they're saying that Trump now shall file under seal. So Jack Smith says, I need to file under seal this stuff. What do you think, Trump, we should do about these redactions related to the immunity materials that Jack has submitted? And get us your proposed redactions, and responses are not going to be back at least until October 10th. Okay, so it's going to be later than we thought. So we're going to have a lot of time. And it seems like it will be more of an October surprise. So we'll start to learn of these things, whatever is ultimately unsealed and unredacted, later in October. And so we're going to keep our eye on this case. Of course, we're grateful that you are joining us as our coverage of this case and others continue. And we're very excited to jump into our conversation. But before we do that, we've got to say what's up to our friends at V-Shred, because we're talking about testosterone today. And we know that testosterone can be drained, or they say it can be drained, by a bunch of other things. Things like bad genetics, aging, lack of exercise, and so on. But what if that's not the case? What if it's just something that you're eating, maybe every day? And what if it's something that you've told has been healthy for you and you just consume it all over the place? Well, this one food, it has been known to devastate men's testosterone levels in some ways than people even expect. Just eating it a few times a week can wreck your testosterone, drain your motivation. And if you just cut it out, you're going to feel much better. We've got firsthand clients from this V-Shred organization that will tell you that when they stopped eating this food, they had lifestyle changes. And the team at V-Shred, behind this cutting edge fitness and nutrition strategy, they've created a video for you that you can go watch. It's linked down in the description below, that will tell you, if you watch it, what this one testosterone killing food is. And so if you want to know what it is, go watch that video. Sculptnation.com/Robert, sculptnation.com/Robert is going to be down in the description below. Watch the video. They'll break it all down. You'll see how it works. And I watched it and I abide by it. The thing that they tell you in there, it's really a pernicious thing. So check it out. V-Shred, link in the description below, sculptnation.com/Robert. And thanks for supporting our sponsors and the show. All right. And so without any further ado, my friends, I want to introduce to you somebody I'm very excited to speak with. Today, we are speaking with an ex-CIA lawyer, the man who wrote this book. It's called Dangerous Injustice. This is from his website. And the book itself is linked down in the description below on Amazon. You can see that I have purchased my hard copy and I have been going through it, and it is outstanding. And so this gentleman who we're going to be bringing on right now is named Joe Sweeney. And Joe, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I just got your book. I know we just met relatively recently. We're both going to be speaking at a conference. I believe that's next week. And so I'm grateful for your time. But when we first met, I got to hear who you were and your background, and I know it's on your book, and I was hoping you could just give us the download on who you are and what your background has been over these last several decades before we dive into some of the same cases that we talk a lot about here.
Sure, absolutely. I have 35 years in federal service. 10 of that was in the U.S. Army. I graduated from West Point in 1987, and then I served 6 years as an airborne ranger qualified infantry officer. After my time in service, I went to law school, and after law school, upon graduating, I was accepted into what was called the CIA National Security Law Honors Program. And then I did the next 25 years of my life as a lawyer in the Central Intelligence Agency. My career was a little unique because in addition to serving as the legal advisor to 6 different components within the Directorate for Operations, I also spent over a dozen years in the CIA's litigation division. And I think that's unprecedented in terms of tenure on the litigation side. I just loved the work. And so I served there as a line attorney, a deputy, an acting chief, and then chief of the division for about 4 years. And so when it comes to any kind of case, civil or criminal, federal or state court, if it involves classified information, I've either handled the issues or written a book on how to handle the issues.
That's amazing. And we've talked a lot about the Mar-a-Lago case with Trump, and I know that that has been a big subject of your book. And so can you tell us about some of the litigation that you did? What types of cases? What type of stuff? Were you prosecuting cases? Were you defending cases, investigating classified documents cases? What was the context of your role?
So I worked on both civil and criminal cases, but on the criminal side, the biggest cases I worked on were espionage prosecutions. And I mean like real espionage, like you see in the movies, where you catch foreigners stealing your secrets. In fact, two of the cases I worked on went to trial, espionage prosecutions, and they were both on 60 Minutes, and I write about them quite a bit in the book. Also, I worked on a number of terrorism prosecutions, to include what was at the time the largest terrorism prosecution in U.S. history, and this was the Al-Qaeda cell that blew up our embassies in East Africa, in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. The prosecutor was Pat Fitzgerald and Ken Karras and Paul Butler, and I went through discovery with them and sat behind them in trial. And so that's basically, espionage and terrorism cases. The CIA also gets involved in all kinds of cases that you would never know. And all of my legal work was designed to keep those three initials off the public record. So there are a lot of those cases as well. I have more time in a judge's chambers than I have in an open courtroom. And I've never been a prosecutor. I say in my book, the Spanish have a saying, there's only one who knows, and that is the one who fights the bull. Well, I never fought the bull, but I helped the matador suit up and had ringside seats to the bullfights. So, and my job was not to ensure that a prosecution was successful. My job was to protect the classified information and to cooperate to the extent possible with the Department of Justice. Those things did not always align well, right? The DOJ goals and the goals of the intelligence community. They can be at odds. And I talk about that quite a bit in the book. But so that was my role. That's what I did. My job was to protect classified information. And I did that in just about every type of, forum that you could imagine involving litigation.
Amazing. And that sounds like the work that we'd expect our government or organizations to be doing.
Yeah. And now another thing that made my experience unique, I also worked on cases where high-level government officials were accused of mishandling classified information. Now, there are only 4 of those cases in our nation's history, and I worked on 3 of the 4 cases. And they were John Deutsch, who was the director of Central Intelligence for Bill Clinton, and then Sandy Berger, who was the National Security Advisor for Bill Clinton. Then there was David Petraeus, who was the director of the CIA for President Obama. And then, of course, the one everyone knows, Hillary Clinton's case from when she was Secretary of State, and she was keeping classified documents on a home server because they were on emails that she had arranged to be stored on a home server, which in government parlance is unsecured. Right. I'm one of the few people in the world who's read the fabled Clinton emails because I participated in the classification review of those. And I do want to state for the record, for you and all of your listeners and viewers, I am not suicidal. Anything ever funny happens with me, you know where to look.
Yes. I'm glad it's on the record. Yeah. And thanks for making ultra sure about that. So, okay. Yes. Mishandling by other government officials. And I did read that in your book, and you give us the good history. And there was, of course, Hillary Clinton that we've talked a lot about here. I think we may have discussed Petraeus in passing, but you brought up Sandy Berger, which was the guy who stuffed the documents, I think, in his pants, right? And so,
down his pants like that.
Yeah, and literally stole those, knowingly stole those with no claim to those. And then you told about this John Deutsch guy, which I had no idea about. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure. John Deutsch was Director of Central Intelligence. Now, that title doesn't exist anymore because this was pre 9/11. And pre 9/11, the head of the CIA was also the head of the intelligence community because the DNI position had not been created until after 9/11. And so Deutsch was DCI. And he was taking home over 300 is what's been reported, classified documents that he took home while he was director. He took them home on like thumb drives, what were called PMCIA cards. And he was working on them at home on computers that were hooked up to the internet and had no security whatsoever. And some of these were at the top secret level. Some were even top secret sensitive compartmented information, which is the highest classification in the United States government. And so he had quite a bit of classified he took home. And after he was done as director, he had to turn in his computers because they were on loan to him from the government. And a standard review of the computers showed the amount and type of classified that he had, even though he attempted to erase it all. You know how slack space works on a computer. You never really destroy it all.
Yeah.
And so when they got suspicious, they started running some software that could kind of put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And then Deutsch's malfeasance became obvious. Now, this was a very controversial case at the time because he was the first. He was the first government official investigated and ultimately prosecuted for mishandling classified information. And what happened was the CIA, first of all, they tried to cover it up. And this was, frankly, this was my office. It was the general counsel at the time and other senior attorneys who, the general counsel is a political appointee, as was Deutsch. So they both worked for the same administration, the Clinton administration. So, the old story in Washington, the cover up is sometimes worse than the crime. And so they tried to cover it up. Well, then there was a whistleblower who reported this conduct to Congress. And then, as a result of that, there was a referral that went over to Janet Reno. Janet Reno was the attorney general at the time. And she declined to investigate, not even a preliminary investigation, nothing.
Wow. Then
someone leaked to the press. And as a result of that, there was backlash against the attorney general. The attorney general reversed herself. She appointed someone to investigate the matter, and I was assigned to work with that prosecutor. And the Deutsch case is also fascinating. All of these cases, to properly analyze them, you have to look at the politics. They are all political cases. You can't just look at the law. And so in Deutsch's case, he ended up signing a plea agreement for one misdemeanor for unlawful possession of one secret document. That's it. He had hundreds and hundreds. They were top secret, but his plea agreement, and so much nefarious stuff, and I talk about this in the book, so many nefarious things happen through plea agreements. Well, this is how his plea agreement was handled. And he signed that plea agreement at 8:00 on a Friday night. Saturday morning was Clinton's last day in office.
Wild.
And Saturday morning, Clinton pardoned Deutsch. So even the one little nixnoid thing, the little slap on the wrist that he got, even that didn't ultimately matter because Clinton pardoned him. Now that pardon of Deutsch never got any media attention at all because the other pardon that Clinton handed down that morning was to a guy named Mark Rich. Mark Rich was a fugitive from justice. He had been indicted in the Southern District of New York for, wire fraud, bribery, and trading with the Iranians during the Iranian hostage crisis, right? What a guy. So he fled the country while he was indicted. Rich's wife donated $1 million to the Democratic National Committee, $450,000 to Bill Clinton's library, and $100,000 to Hillary Clinton's Senate run. And it was only after those donations from Rich's wife that the pardon came down to Rich. By the way, Mark Rich had at one point been on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Now,
Wild.
and the swamp is deep and the swamp is broad. And I give many examples of it throughout the book, but this is a really good one because that pardon would have never been approved by the DOJ pardon office. And so what the Democrats did, they routed the pardon around the DOJ pardon office. The DOJ pardon office didn't even know about that pardon. They went to one person, a deputy attorney general at DOJ, and that one person approved the pardon. His name was Eric Holder.
Wow.
You couldn't make these things up. You couldn't make it up.
Yeah, it's like those movies, right, where they're all connected and you see it all together. It's when you zoom in on it enough, you can see those connections. And your book does that beautifully. I mean, I learned a lot about these other cases, really, the Petraeus case you gave us, the Deutsche case, the Clinton case, and you're walking us through a compare and contrast with how they were treated with pardons and cover-ups and total silence in a collusive manner, and then what they did with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And I want to go to that because in your book,
sure,
what I loved, I think it was chapter 9, but you actually entitled the chapter "The Siege," which is the raid at Trump's residence in Mar-a-Lago. And I noticed that language was pretty, aggressive and provocative, which we love here because that's exactly what we thought it was. And we've made that case here for a long time. But I'd love to hear from you, why this is categorized as that and not what they tell us it was, which just is a totally benign recovery of documents. And they were just going there to pick up a couple files, and your perspective of that from
Sure.
your experience.
It was actually this incident that led me to write the book.
Okay.
I've been a student of American history my whole life. I majored in American history at West Point. And so I've always just been interested in American history. And when the home of a former president was raided by the FBI, that got my attention. And also because it was a mishandling case, and I probably have more experience with those cases than just about anyone in the world, I focused in on it and I started researching. And what I found is that with every stone I turned over, I found more malfeasance on behalf of the Biden administration, right? I'll give you some examples. I was particularly interested, of course, to see the FBI affidavit supporting the raid warrant. That's the most important document. And so what the Biden administration was doing was they were releasing meaningless documents, things that really didn't matter, claiming transparency, while they were fighting tooth and nail to keep that raid warrant off the public record. So they weren't seeking transparency at all, even though that's what they were saying. And as is often the case with that administration, what they're doing is exactly the opposite of what they're saying they're doing, or they're doing what they're accusing someone of doing, right?
Projection.
And so I was anxious to read the affidavit, and finally it was released on the public record with heavy redactions. But the part I was interested in was not redacted. And that's the part where they were explaining classified information to the federal court and generally and how it all works. And then also specifically the classified information that was believed to be at issue in this case. I have written hundreds of those types of affidavits to federal judges, and I have supervised the drafting of thousands of such affidavits. Reading those affidavits for me is like breathing, right? I have so much experience with it. And what I noticed right off the bat was one mistake or omission or misrepresentation after another. I just could not believe what I was reading. They didn't even properly articulate the standard under the executive order for classifying information. And I think that was actually an honest mistake because there was nothing to be gained from it. They were just paraphrasing the standard, and by doing so, it was inaccurate. Other things they did was, very briefly, I think there's one sentence in that affidavit where they say that classified information is classified pursuant to executive order, which is true. But then they glance right over that and they make it sound like that's just a mere ministerial point.
Right.
And then they go on to list all these rules about storage and transportation and access to classified information, which are all true. Those are all real rules. And what they neglect to tell the court is that none of those rules apply to the president.
Right. You're bearing the lead there. Yeah.
Yeah, none of them. You wouldn't know that to read the affidavit, let me tell you. They made it sound like all of those things apply to the president, and none of them apply to the president. And, at the beginning of the book, I do what I hope is explaining classified information and the whole paradigm around it in a way that anyone can understand. At least that was my goal, because information is classified pursuant to presidential power. Congress does not own classified information. The judiciary does not own classified information. It belongs to the executive branch and specifically to the president. Now, people wouldn't want to hear this, but Joe Biden could take a box of classified documents, top secret, bring them home to Delaware for the weekend, and just hand them out to sunbathers on Rehoboth Beach. He will have broken no law. That stuff belongs to him. He can do that. You don't like that. I don't like that, but that's the law.
And can I pause you on that just real quickly? Where does that power come from? Does that come from the opinion clause, or the opinion of your executive branch in writings from the Constitution, or where are you identifying the source of that?
Well, it's the Supreme Court that has identified the source, and the case is Department of Navy versus Egan, and it's in the Commander in Chief. It's all flows from the president's power as Commander in Chief.
Got it.
Yep.
And I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought.
That's okay. Yeah. So it was so misleading of the FBI to make it sound like the president had violated these rules, because all these rules, transportation, storage, access, they apply to everyone below the president, everyone below the president. But the president is not bound by his own orders. Another good example is, to declassify classified information, there's a, as you would expect, there's a process, and the process has to be followed. But not for the president. The president could declassify information by waving a wand over a box and saying "Spectro declassiarmis." Right? That's all it takes. He could literally quaff 3 martinis, pluck out the straw, and scribble it on a cocktail napkin if he wants. It doesn't matter because he's the president, right?
Right.
And the president, so this is all done under executive power, and the president personifies executive power in pure form. You would never know any of this reading the FBI affidavit. Another thing that jumped out at me in reading the affidavit, and I had a little bit of experience with the Presidential Records Act, but very little. But I knew that it was a civil statute with no criminal provisions. And yet that was one of the primary justifications supporting the probable cause, that the president had violated a civil statute, and that somehow justified, taking a battering ram to his home. It's ridiculous. Because not only is it a civil statute, but it's a civil statute that has no enforcement mechanism against a president or vice president, current or former. And under that statute, the president gets to decide, and a vice president gets to decide, what are personal records and what are going to be presidential records that get sent to the National Archives. And so these are just a couple of the things in the FBI affidavit that jumped out at me. But it made me very suspicious, and I just kept digging.
Now, do you think that the FBI should have had the competency to write a proper affidavit that would have been more in alignment with the standards that you would expect? Or is this something that the FBI is not familiar with and they can just chalk up to incompetency? Or is there more in that creation of that affidavit that was nefarious, that hinted that maybe this was nefarious, like they're trying to hide the ball in order to go justify the raid?
It's a little bit of both. They do have the expertise. They do not work with classified information as much as the intelligence community. So
because you're CIA, you're like the expert CIA guy. These are just FBI guys. So maybe they chalk it up. We're confused.
Well, while that's true, the FBI, they have national security people in a national security section, and they have counterintelligence agents. I've worked with many of them, and they were, at the agent level, they're fantastic, right? I don't have gripes with individual agents. It's the higher levels, right? That's where all the nefarious activity occurred. But so they have the expertise, not as much as the intelligence community, but they have enough. And so there were some things in there, like when they misstated the standard for classification. That was, I think, an honest mistake. But the other things, it was very clear to me that they were describing things in a manner that would persuade the judge to grant them what they wanted, which was a raid warrant, and that they were making no attempt at all to be honest. No attempt to honestly describe the situation with classified information and who the executive order applies to and who it doesn't apply to. And in most cases, it wouldn't matter. Any other case that is not involving a president,
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
But when you're going after a president, it matters very much. And I happen to know some of the people who work in these areas. They're still there. And I know they know better. And so what this was is something that I'm sure you've seen throughout your career, where the prosecution is putting its thumb on the scale right from the get-go.
Yeah, and that was a question that I have, is how do these mechanics get through? So is the judge, I think it was a magistrate judge who probably doesn't have a lot of experience in the classified document space, so maybe he's not looking for that, or is that a misread? Do you remember who this judge was and how that worked?
No, I think you're absolutely right. It was a magistrate. He probably had very little, if any, exposure previously to classified information.
Yeah.
And he took the government's word at its word. And so I would not fault him.
Right.
But it also wouldn't have taken much research to figure out what I'm telling you, that when you're going after a president, you have to have a different approach than you would to everyone else, because a president has unique authority over classified information, and you have to acknowledge that. So I guess I don't think I'd be too hard on the magistrate. And in fact, I did not criticize him in my book, even though this particular magistrate had donated to Hillary Clinton's campaign, and in fact even recused himself from a case because it involved Hillary Clinton. And so he certainly had political bias, but I didn't feel there was enough there to criticize him, and I did not in my book.
Okay, and so let's pick it up where we left off. So this raid happens, this siege happens, you start looking into it, and it triggers in you a decision to write this book. Can you kind of pick us up from there?
Sure. So I started researching and writing, and like I said, I was very disturbed at what I was finding. And I just started writing really out of catharsis. I mean, I had retired the year before. I had time to look at these things. And I thought, well, maybe I'll write an article. Maybe people would really want to know the truth about this, because I was also seeing everything on television. And 95% of the mainstream media is controlled by the Democratic Party, in my opinion. And I ended up doing almost a whole chapter on propaganda, right? And propaganda on the raid, because I could not believe what I was seeing, which was, oh, this wasn't a raid. This wasn't a raid at all. It was like a public service visit. And, there was no force involved. This is all just normal stuff. This stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, I actually underlined it, so I loved it. You said it was a propaganda cluster bomb. I thought it was a great phrase. So a propaganda cluster bomb, and it's on page 184. And then what you did is you went through and you talk about you give examples of all of the different propaganda pieces that were essentially coming out. And so I'll just read through some of them. So
Sure.
This one, NBC reporter Ryan Riley, everybody knows who he is. As soon as the raid happens, okay, it's statement after statement after statement. He says, the FBI is a conservative-leaning law enforcement organization, and we have sort of lost the thread on that in the last 6 years. MSNBC legal analyst and I love how you did this, how you told us about these MSNBC like he's a legal analyst, but where did he come from? Oh, yeah, he came from the DOJ, right? He came from the Eastern District of Virginia, and so he's going to be supporting whatever the government is doing. And so it's all legal. He says it's all lawful. It's not a raid. They are not there improperly or unlawfully. And the list goes on and on. You got Mara Gray. You got Neil Katyal over from MSNBC says, oh, they're returning to their historical position as a law enforcement agency above politics, trying to do the right thing, right? And the list goes on and on. You got like 3 pages of it. And so, as a CIA, ex-CIA lawyer and somebody who studies propaganda, knows this stuff, what was going on here?
So, the CIA does basically 2 things. It steals secrets and it engages in presidentially authorized covert action. Covert action stuff, that's the stuff in the movies, right? That's the real dangerous stuff. And it's technically defined as when the United States government is attempting to influence political, economic, and military conditions abroad while hiding the hand of the US government, right? And so that's not just collecting intelligence, that's trying to influence what's happening in foreign countries around the world. Now, this is very controversial stuff. Part of covert action is covert influence, what most people would call propaganda. And so I taught these things at the CIA. I had studied covert actions that were declassified and worked on FOIA cases where I had the redacting pen in my hand because not everything gets released. And so when I look at the media today, I look at it through that lens because I know how these things work. I know how propaganda works. And some of them are obvious and some of them are subtle. But that's how I look at the media. And that's why I did that one deep dive on the raid, because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And it was a great example that I think anyone could understand of how propaganda works. And, I'll give the Democratic Party credit for this. Yeah. They stay on message, right? They get those talking points out. They stay on message, right? You look at across the stream of mainstream media, and they're regurgitating pretty much the same bullet points. And there's something to be said for that. Again, I don't share the politics, but I would at least give them credit for being organized and staying on message as much as I like the message.
They're very good at that. And one of the things that we saw after the raid was this narrative that these were nuclear secrets and these were national security travesties. We were all going to die, and whatever was, the worst thing they could possibly muster and write about, they said were in those documents. And so can you maybe give us some clarity on what your interpretation was of what's actually in there, if you know, or the level of severity? Give us some context for those claims.
One of the criticisms of the FBI and DOJ that has come out in the DOJ IG reports is that they have media leak strategies, right? Part of the way they litigate a case, prosecute a criminal case, is to make selective leaks to the media to influence the case. And the DOJ IG was very critical of this conduct. And so that's what we saw in the Mar-a-Lago case. And the great example is the one you just gave, the nuclear secrets at risk.
Yeah.
Trump could be doing anything. He could be selling the nuclear codes. Now, all of this is ridiculous because the nuclear codes are probably changed, every couple seconds. But put that aside. So one of the first things I did when looking at the FBI raid affidavit, I looked to the section where they describe the classified information that they believe is at issue. And there's all kinds of code words that don't mean anything to most people, but they're very meaningful to me. And you know what's not in there? The code word for nuclear information. There's also no mention of the Atomic Energy Act, which is a whole separate thing that covers nuclear information. Not mentioned in there at all, which means they were leaking that to the media while they knew darn well that none of that was at issue in the case. Now, even more interesting, there was one document that Trump had that was labeled FRD. FRD means formally restricted data, which means it's classified and it relates to nuclear information, right? But it's classified under the executive order. And so, and it was a fairly low level classification, but Trump did have one document at Mar-a-Lago. Biden had two. Biden had two FRD documents. He had twice as much as Trump. You never heard anyone in the media clutching their pearls over nuclear information in Biden's case. Yep. There's twice as much in his case as there was in Trump's. And it was low level stuff because if it was higher level, it would have had different classification determinations, which were not there.
And so I encourage people to get the book to understand all the complexities of this because there's many layers to this. But When we're comparing and contrasting this, you brought up Biden and his documents. He was treated completely differently for violations that were worse, and you go through some analysis of that in your book. And I guess, can you give us some thoughts on maybe why that discrepancy occurred, right? Why was Biden treated so differently for his documents? Is it about obstruction, or is it about Trump being, difficult to work with, or why was Trump raided and Biden got a couple taps on the shoulders and his lawyers got to rummage around and search things and not get raided?
Sure. Let me first just briefly set the stage, right, for the
Please.
conduct that was at issue. Biden in his home had over 100 classified documents. He also had some in his downtown DC office. This is private home in Wilmington, Delaware. They were all over the house. The first level den, the third level den, the basement, the foyer, in a grocery bag outside his bedroom, in filing cabinets, in folders, right? So some of them were in boxes, and it's possible if documents are in boxes that maybe he didn't know, right? Maybe they were packed by staffers and he'd never looked in them. But in Biden's house, those documents had been placed in file folders, some of which were in Biden's own handwriting. Now, these documents that he had, they went back to the 1970s. He was literally hoarding and stealing classified documents for 50 years, half a century, right? And of course, people wouldn't know this because this wasn't, being given to them by the mainstream media. Half a century of stealing classified documents and bringing them to his home and putting them in file folders all over the house. And
he wasn't president during those times, so he doesn't have that same power that Trump has.
Exactly. And so, and it gets a little complicated. For instance, there's one area of the executive order where vice presidents are excused and don't have to follow all the rules of everyone else. And that's for access. Right. And that makes sense, right? Because these are the president and the vice president are the two highest level, elected people in the executive branch. And so why would you make the vice president take a polygraph test, go through a background investigation, have people looking through his credit card purchases, right?
Right.
Visiting with a psychologist, all the stuff that I had to do, right, to maintain a security clearance. So to get access to classified information, the vice president is excused from those things. But the vice president is not excused from handling, storage, sharing, all those other rules. And at this time, right up to the point that Biden was taking this stuff, which was, from the time he was a senator up to 2016 when he left the vice presidency, he had to abide by those rules, but he was violating them knowingly, right? And that's a violation of the espionage statute. He was knowingly violating that portion that is for knowing retention, right? Willful retention in that language of the statute. And then also, he was absolutely grossly negligent in the handling of classified information throughout his vice presidency. So that's kind of the conduct that's at issue, right? And you compare that with Trump. Biden had 50 years worth of stuff in his house that he'd been hoarding and stealing, and he knew he had it. Whereas with Trump, those boxes got packed up by staffers at the end of his presidency. There was chaos, and it all went to Mar-a-Lago. And it was there about a year and a half. Right, in a home that was guarded by the Secret Service, where Biden's home did not have that level of security for many years, and there was no evidence, it's not even mentioned in the indictment, nothing to indicate that Trump knew what was in the boxes. And the special counsel, I'll get ahead of myself a little bit. He got around all that by coming up with a unique form of causation because Trump caused it all to happen. He said Trump caused the boxes to be packed. I mean, it's kind of hilarious, right? It's like these were the last days of the presidency, and it was obviously chaotic. But according to the special counsel, Trump, was dictating to everyone what to put in boxes, knowing every pedigree of every document while planning a coup d'état. Quite the multitasker, old Donald J. Huh? Quite the multitasker. Yeah. So the conduct is so different. Trump violated no law whatsoever. There's also evidence right in the indictment that Trump considered everything that was going to his house to be his personal papers, right? They actually quote the people working for him Walt Nutta, and I forgot the name of the other guy, as saying, "Oh, these are," he said these are his papers, right?
Right.
Which means which would have shielded him completely. And so the conduct is completely different. And yet, look at how the investigations were handled. And there's only one way to explain the stark disparities in how these investigations were handled, and that is political bias. I mean, you have the Biden DOJ investigating President Biden. They actually permitted Biden's private attorneys to search Biden's homes. And this is after
Right.
classified had even been found in the home. This is after classified with information and documents were found in the garage. The FBI didn't search the house. They
Right.
let Biden's private lawyers. Now, when have you ever heard of that? There's only one case I'm aware of, and that was Hillary Clinton's case, where the FBI let Clinton's lawyers search her hard drives, and they never even got copies of them. There's just no other way to explain that than political bias.
Right. And
Now,
then they went into Melania's closet, is my understanding. They were taking photographs of Barron's bedroom, and then they were leaking the photographs out, right? We saw the photographs that came out, and we saw all the horrendous cover sheets on there. And I don't know if in your experience, if that's something that's normal for them to do, to publicize the crime scene and the classified documents, or if
no,
that's
it's not.
standard.
And I give this as yet another example of the propaganda, because they want to taint the voting pool and they want to taint the jury pool. And so what they did with the documents was they brought the cover sheets, these glossy red, top secret.
Right.
I call it's like the national security version of a Victoria's Secret fashion show, right? So they put that on there, and then they photographed them, and then they put the photographs on the public record.
Yeah.
A judge could call that tampering with evidence, but
look doctored.
Yeah. And so, and in addition to that, we see all these photos of all these boxes and boxes and boxes of documents. You would think that Trump didn't have the right to take stuff from his presidency. Presidents get to take stuff. They get to take a lot of stuff. It's not unusual that he had boxes in his home from his presidency. Not only that, there were only about 100 some odd documents that the FBI seized in the raid. They could have all fit in one box. So why is the FBI and DOJ showing us photographs of 40 boxes and boxes piled up around toilets? I'll tell you why, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And they want that at the forefront of people's minds. They're poisoning the voting pool. That's why they did it. Now, in contrast, one of the places they found classified documents belonging to Biden were in the boxes that Biden has donated to the University of Delaware, and he's donated over 2,000 boxes of documents from his time as a senator and as vice president. Now they didn't even search them all. They sampled them. They around 260 boxes or something they sampled, and they found classified documents in there, right? But you know what you haven't seen? You haven't seen any photos of Biden's 2,000 boxes, have you? No, you have not. And you know what? You're not gonna.
No, you're not. And that begs the question. So we cover a lot of these cases here. We've been covering the Florida case, a lot of the Biden cases, the Hunter Biden cases, and there's a clear difference of prosecutorial, fervor when it comes to Trump versus the other people. And we're trying to figure out where that is, and the left constantly tells us that we can't ascribe that to any politicization because the DOJ is an honorable institution and there's separation between everybody and so on and so forth. But what is happening ultimately when we have, I want to ask about the letter, the Hunter Biden letter, the 51 intelligence agents who signed this Hunter Biden letter that was apparently identifying the Hunter hard drive as disinformation. And then we learned that was not actually true, right? That was actually Hunter Biden's laptop. We also saw the DOJ protecting Hunter Biden when they were warning his attorneys before they raided they actually didn't actually raid anything because they emptied the warehouse before they searched the warehouse. So there's just a total different standard that's happening here. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, what's going on? Is this an institutional problem at the top? Is this a political problem from a couple of the key leaders? Because we're here and we often will cover FBI meetings and DOJ meetings. The Attorney General will come into Congress and ask for more money. FBI director will come in and ask for more money, but we don't see the CIA come in and ask for more money. And so we're trying to get our bearings straight on how this is all working. So I just vomited a lot of stuff out there, but
no, I get it. What I can tell you is, it's worse than you think.
Okay.
And in my book, I have a quote from the French philosopher Voltaire, who I happen to be a fan of. And Voltaire once quipped that anyone who can get you to believe absurdities can get you to commit atrocities. And I apply that to the Democratic Party, because they have gotten their adherents to believe in absurdities. The Hunter Biden laptop was not Hunter Biden's. Walls don't work. There's more than two sexes. You can't define the word woman. Biden is the smartest guy in the room. And Trump is an existential threat to democracy. I could go on and on and on. The absurdities that they have gotten their people to believe. And then Voltaire's logic was that once the faculty of the mind has been dominated, from then it's a slippery slope down. And so you could get them to commit atrocities. And so the people who, and this isn't just political appointees, it's career people in the FBI and DOJ who wield a great deal of power. And you know better than anyone how much power a federal prosecutor can wield.
Yeah.
They just became tainted, right? And they started to believe the BS. And I trace this all the way back to 2016, when Hillary Clinton was supposed to be a shoo-in. They were all planning the coronation. They were hanging the buntings. And then all of a sudden, this Trump guy came along like the Grinch and stole the coronation. They were in despair. And I live in D.C. D.C.'s 92% for Joe Biden in 2020. Right? I'm surrounded by Democrats. It's a stronghold for the Democratic Party. And my neighbors were in deep despair. They were in shock. And while they were down and in shock, the Democratic Party just filled them with hatred and fear and just hate-filled rhetoric. And they became poisoned by it. And they came to believe that, the ends justified the means. As long as they were going to get Trump, it wouldn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. Twist the laws, twist the facts, do whatever you have to do. It's all justified because you're getting Trump. And they just lost it, and that's what I saw happen. And it's across the board. It's not just, my book is about the weaponization of FBI and DOJ, but it's the entire executive branch is like that. And, back in 2016, at least back then, when they were unlawfully targeting the Trump campaign, back then they were using intelligence collection authorities, right? Like FISA warrants and under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. At least back then, they had the decency to try and hide what they were doing. Nowadays, from the raid on, they're acting openly as an enforcement arm of the Democratic Party. And the way you're able to do that, again, is not only do you have the political appointees on board with doing it, but you have a high level careerists who have a great deal of power, who think that it's okay so as long as they get Trump. And look what happened back in 2016. The FBI leadership got wiped out. Comey got fired. McCabe got fired. He was the deputy director. And then there was Lisa Page and, Pete Strzok and others. They all drank the Kool-Aid. They fell prey to the hatred, and it warped them.
Yeah, we see a lot of that. And I remember we read the transcript. I think it was Mike Morrell, from the ex-CIA director, who sat down for that testimony with the House and basically said the same thing when they were questioning him about the conversation with Anthony Blinken and providing Biden with those talking points. And so I think there's that quote, I think it was from George Carlin, or maybe he got it from somewhere, that you don't need a conspiracy when you have common interests and people are working together because they just don't like Trump, right? It's kind of to get Trump, and there are a lot of forces at play to do that.
Yeah, and I know many of the people who signed that Hunter Biden letter. There were like 51 of them. I know many of them. Yep. They're all hardcore Democrats, right? That's the common thread. between them.
Right.
They're either hardcore Democrats or just Trump haters. And the language of the letter is very finely wordsmithed,
Very,
right?
yeah.
It has all the earmarks of a Russia disinformation. They don't say it is, right?
Right.
And so they measle mouthed it. And, there's no doubt, and Morell admitted this once he was under oath, that it was solely to help Joe Biden to give him a
Right.
talking point in the upcoming presidential debate. And it worked, right? It worked.
It did work. And I think it's an unfortunate thing. I think it's, as more and more people are learning about it, I think it's wrecking the credibility of our institutions that we can't rely on them to come out and give us, an honest shake. And I think Trump is the victim of a lot of this right now. And he is, fortunately strong enough to weather the storm. But I mean, anybody else getting prosecuted for something like this, anybody else that has the book thrown at them and has the entire DOJ and FBI and all these agencies orient themselves, I think is going to get steamrolled.
Yeah, in my book, again, I trace it all the way back to 2016, right? And so first we have what I call the Russia collusion hoax coup, because it was more than a hoax. It was a soft coup. And then we had the persecution of General Flynn, Trump's national security advisor. Then we had the persecution of Trump's close friend, Roger Stone. I mean, do you remember when the FBI raided Stone? Stone, first of all, an elderly man with no prior convictions, no history of violence. When the FBI raided his home, it looked like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan, right? Crazy. Then you go forward to the impeachment hoaxes, and then to the J6 kangaroo court. It's one attempt after another to politically assassinate Trump. And then when they couldn't politically assassinate him, they created conditions that would permit a physical assassination of Trump. Now, do I think, they were planning an assassination? No, I don't. But they certainly were not willing to provide resources that were adequate to protect Trump. They were declining requests that were made for additional security. And the only reason those requests were being made is because they needed to be made, right? And so on the one hand, they were not permitting adequate safeguards to protect Trump, while on the other hand, they were whipping up, through violent rhetoric, all kinds of, passions that are not healthy for the nation. Oh, and one thing that's often forgotten is while they were declining to allocate the resources that were necessary to protect Trump, Benny Thompson introduced a bill into Congress. This is H.R. 8081 to remove completely Trump's Secret Service protection. Think how vile that is, how depraved that is, because the only reason he has that protection is to protect his life, and not just his life, his wife and his kids. I mean, how depraved. Can you imagine if the Republicans had introduced a bill into Congress to remove Barack Obama's Secret Service protection? Those Republican legislators would likely be rounded up, handcuffed, and on a plane flight to Gitmo, courtesy of Merrick Garland. And then they'd be indicted for some, collusion, conspiracy to murder former President Obama. They'd be down at Gitmo getting bread and water, and the water they'd be getting would be on a declined board with a cloth over their face.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think in some maybe subconscious, sick way, they're telegraphing what they want to happen. And I hate to even say that, but there were a lot of way too many people who were making inappropriate comments after the first assassination attempt and the second assassination attempt. And the second assassination attempt with this Ruth fellow, Ryan Ruth, he was traveling back and forth to Ukraine. And what ends up happening in a lot of these situations, and I'm guilty of it myself too, is when anything unexplainable goes on, everybody just says, oh, it's the CIA. CIA did it, because it's a nice convenient thing to say the CIA did it. And it really explains a lot of things that we don't have good explanations for. But with Ryan Ruth, right, we're asking ourselves, okay, is the CIA involved in Ukraine? And this guy's really affiliated with Ukraine. He's coming back and forth, and he gets reported to Homeland or Border Patrol reports him to Homeland. They let him go back and forth and go through. What are you seeing with these things? I mean, I'm sure you can't say, yes, the CIA did it or something like that, but what's your perception on what's happening with these other incidents? Is this
Sure. I mean,
random, or is there something else going on?
I'm not a big conspiracy theorist because I've worked behind the scenes and I've been
Sure,
on the receiving end of those types of accusations. And I
sure.
always laugh and I think to myself, wow, first of all, they think there's people in the government smart enough to plan that and pull it off. Yeah, well, yeah, that would be nice. And then two, even if the government was smart enough to plan it and pull it off, you think they could keep that a secret? If there's more than two people involved in something of that nature, you ain't keeping that a secret. That's going to leak. So for that reason, I'm not big on the conspiracy theories. But and I know that often the explanation is just government incompetence,
Yeah.
right? But especially when it comes to protecting Trump. So that's how I would see it, just incompetence. It is inconceivable to me that that guy was not on everybody's radar, right?
Right.
Intelligence, law
Right.
enforcement, everybody. He's
Right.
got to be all over the radar.
Right. Well, that's
Because
why we're all scratching our heads saying, what the heck, man? I thought like all these agencies were there to identify these people in particular. This guy's got like 100 felonies, and then suddenly he's
yeah.
in the
Now
vicinity of Trump.
here's one thing that nobody focuses on. It is very difficult, and this is purposeful. It is difficult to target United States citizens for collection with intelligence authorities, and that's purposeful. And the rules on that, they're published. That's Executive Order 12333. It's on the public record, right? And so it's difficult to target U.S. citizens with intelligence collection authorities. Now, I can't speak to the law enforcement authorities. That wasn't my bailiwick, but I would imagine they have, well, for the most part, they have probably similar restrictions. They got to be careful. But then look what they did when they want to do it. Like, look what they did to Roger Stone, to Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
I mean, when they want to get you, look what they've done now to Eric Adams in New York.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah.
he's mentioned he never criticized the Biden administration right now.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I'm wondering about, like J6 too. And I understand your point about the government being incompetent. I think we see it. We can all experience it. I worry about the weaponization of incompetence as an excuse for when bad things happen. Oh, we couldn't put someone on the roof, and it's very slopey, and it was hot that day. And come on, and come on. So if it's incompetence, in certain domains, the Secret Service shouldn't be incompetent in that domain. It's kind of their primary deliverable is to make sure people don't get shot.
right.
And so it feels like an easy scapegoat. And then we see other situations where in January 6th, where we know that there were a bunch of undercover people there who were part of the government, part of intelligence agencies. We know it. We covered the Proud Boys trial where they stipulated and admitted that there were eight federal agents there. There were only 5 Proud Boys there. And we also saw that I think the defense was trying to also admit something like evidence of 50 CHSs there. And so if we can't even get evidence, we all saw this event happen, and they won't even tell us what really happened there with all of that other things. I think that's where people get skeptical that maybe some of these conspiracies can happen, and that something else more complicated can just be buried by all the power at play.
It reminds me of a story. I worked with a old FBI agent who'd been around forever, and to include through the 60s and 70s when they were targeting the anti-war protesters. And he told me a story of when he went to an anti-war protest meeting. There were about a dozen people, and 10 of them were government undercover people at the meeting.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah.
it does happen. And I don't know anything about J6 specifically.
Yeah.
But all I needed to do was see the photographs of the people around that day. I could pick out those people. It wasn't
Right.
hard.
Right.
So yeah, there is something to that.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So what do we miss in your book that we haven't hit yet? I know we could probably just bounce around from topic to topic, but
Yeah. So the indictment, right? The charge, we covered generally.
yes.
Yeah. So we covered generally, the conduct and then how the investigations were unfair. Oh, let me cover just one more thing from the investigations, because this is fascinating. When the FBI finally did search Biden's house, of course, with Biden's private lawyers and White House counsel president, they found a top secret document, and Biden's private lawyers informed the FBI that they did not have consent to take it. Think about
Well,
that.
yeah, that's
And
nice.
then the White House counsel, a senior lawyer from the White House counsel, traveled from Washington, D.C. up to Wilmington to take possession of the document. He took it from the FBI. Have you ever heard of a White House counsel lawyer inserting himself into the chain of custody for a critical piece of evidence in a criminal case? No, it's ridiculous. You couldn't even imagine that something like that could happen, but it happened. And there are many, I'll just tell your viewers, there's many other instances where the investigations were handled just completely differently, right? Everything in Biden's case was voluntary, right? The searches, there were no subpoenas, there were no search warrants, no grand jury. Oh, Biden's
Right.
private lawyers, even though Biden's private lawyers were permitted to rummage through the crime scenes, they were not questioned because and the special counsel Hur said this. He said, well, that would have required me to get into attorney-client communications, so I couldn't ask him those questions, which is actually correct, right?
Right.
A prosecutor should not be able to get in between the confidential communications between someone who is potentially a defendant and their lawyers. But that's not what happened in Trump's case.
No,
In
it's
Trump's
not.
case, yeah, they went quickly to legal compulsion, subpoenas, search warrants, grand jury, and then they hauled Trump's private lawyers before the grand jury and forced them to divulge protected attorney-client communications. Now they got a court order to do that. It's an 87-page opinion from Judge Beryl Howell, and I spend 3 pages criticizing that opinion because it's horrible in my book. So that's just, again, that's the investigations in a nutshell, how unfair they were and how disparately they were handled. And then you
Right.
look
And I
at
think, sorry to interrupt you, but I think we
okay.
saw, Beryl Howell, we've seen some very curious relationships with her. I think she was at a conference with Loretta Lynch or some other Obama people or something like that, right? Somebody who did not like Trump, in my opinion, and then was weaponizing the justice system in order to crack the attorney-client privilege between Trump and his legal team so that they could
I call
indict
her
him.
I call her a frequent engineer on the Get Trump train.
Yes,
She
that's great.
was the judge for the Mueller
Yeah.
investigation,
Yeah.
right? So she's got a long history of helping DOJ get Trump, and she's,
Right.
of course, a Democrat.
Right. In
And
DC, right?
yes, and I go through all that in my book,
Yeah.
and people can read it all in detail. And so then you get to the charging decisions, right? And nothing for Biden, right? This is a guy who stole classified information for half a century, had it all over his house, was completely reckless, knew he had it, because one of the pieces of evidence that the special counsel obtained was an audio recording of Biden talking to his ghostwriter in February of 2017. So he'd
Yeah.
left the White House. He was now a private citizen working on his book. And you can hear Biden say on the recording as he's coming up from the basement, I just found all the classified stuff downstairs. Now, think of that's, any prosecutor would call that a taped confession, right? It would be a star piece of evidence, but that's not what DOJ did. What they did was they said, well, he was so senile at the time that he likely forgot, right after he found it, he probably forgot that he found it. They also, and this is the best part, special counsel Hur then said, I also don't think many people would put much weight onto an 8-word utterance. Can you imagine that?
No.
In a murder case, what if a prosecutor has a tape where the defendant says, I just killed him? Well, that's 4 words. I don't see them dismissing that because it's too succinct of a confession. It's ridiculous, right?
Right, totally.
Yeah, but they did that. And there's many other reasons. I call them all the get out of jail free cards that they dealt to Biden. And I go through them all in the book, to include, one of the ones that really irritated me, because all my Democratic friends would throw this in my face. Oh, but they're very different because Biden cooperated with the process.
Right. The obstruction. Right. That's the argument.
And I said, well, what process was that? The process that Biden's own administration came up with to investigate Biden? Yeah, right. And then I, list the 7 ways to pierce the myth of cooperation. Biden refused to answer questions from the special counsel. Refused to answer. That's not cooperation, right? Refused to give consent for them to take documents that they found. That's not cooperation. And there are many, many other instances I give in the book.
And
then
they
you
were
look,
very sneaky about it. They were not forthcoming about it, right? We learned about it like days after it happened, and there was weird stuff from Karine Jean-Pierre at the White House, and nobody really knew what was going on. Then all of a
I,
sudden,
in
it's
my book,
happened.
I lay out the timeline in my book of what happened when, what they told us, and how what they told us turned out to be a complete fabrication and a lie.
Yeah.
And they kept it off the public record for months. I mean, after they first found classified documents belonging to Biden, they kept it off the record for months. And another thing is, we still do not have total accountability for what Biden stole because even the special counsel never gave us a total number. Now, I added them up in the appendix, and I got to about 130. But there's other things like there was a stack of note cards that were highly classified. They just call it a stack. Biden's private lawyers took 9 boxes from the Penn Biden Center and sent them to Boston. We still don't know what was in those documents. And
Wild.
so I suspect Biden had hundreds of more classified documents than has been put on the public record. But he gets off scot-free, right? No charging
Yep.
decision, nothing. And then you look at what they did to Trump. It is unbelievable, especially for someone with my experience. And I've worked on cases with real spies, and we charged them with 1 count of espionage. 1. Trump had 32 counts broken down into individual documents. I'd never seen that done before. So that's how they got 32 felonies, by breaking them down and charging per document. I'll remind you, John Deutsch's case, he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of classified documents. He got charged with 1 document, secret, on a misdemeanor, but not Trump. And Trump was president, for crying out loud, with more control over classified information than anyone. And also, everything in that indictment is so devious. They even fuzzed up the timing. Now, obviously, the White House has got cameras around it. They know when those documents got packed into boxes and put it onto trucks. But the way they say it in the indictment is, upon departing the White House. Well, the first thing I thought was, while he was still president or after? Now, you know it was while he was still president, but they don't want to say it. They don't want to say it because it tubes their case, because that's a presidential action at that point, and he's going to have immunity for that.
Right.
Everything in that indictment is so devious. I'm just scratching the surface of it. But those are some of the big ones.
And those are great. And what do you think of the current status of the case right now? We've been following the dismissal based on Jack Smith's illegitimacy. We call him not a real boy. You know, he wants to be a real boy, but he's not really, because Judge Cannon said he says he's not. And he's appealing that. And there were a slew of motions from Trump's defense team. I thought many of them were very good, that were attacking the deficiencies in the indictment. And it got dismissed on this appointments thing. Any thoughts on where it stands and where it might go?
I think, I read the opinion. I would not claim to be an expert on the appropriations clause, but
Sure.
it made sense to me. So that was one data point for me, and I can usually sniff out BS. But it was a well-written opinion. It appeared to me to be thoughtful and well-reasoned. And so, the other data point I have is, I have some friends who are Democrats, and they're very smart lawyers. And in discussions with them, they were all willing to acknowledge that, boy, that argument, after I saw the opinion, I realized that there was more merit to the argument than I realized. Right. So, of course, they were just poo-pooing it with their talking points. It's a Trump appointee. It's all BS. But after they read the opinion, they were like, there does appear to be something there. Now, I would concede that it's kind of a close call, and people could make good arguments for either side. I think the judge came down on the right side. Now, it'll be very interesting to see what happens on appeal. But even if the district court judge is reversed on appeal, either at the appellate court or by the Supreme Court, Trump has a dozen other very good defenses. I outline a bunch of them in the book. Just the big ones. I don't even try and list them all. And I'm not a defense attorney. I wouldn't be qualified to list them all, but I know the national security ones. And any given one of them, like, for instance, the immunity now, what would that opinion from the Supreme Court? Because that was a presidential action of him deciding what he was going to take and what he wasn't. And it occurred while he was still president.
Yeah. And we are hopefully going to see that same argument applied in the J6 case. And so then Chutkan's going to have to make a decision on whether Jack Smith's a real boy or not. And I think the Court of Appeals there will affirm when she says he's valid. And so we might have a circuit split maybe if it evolves that way. But I did find it interesting that the Biden administration certainly knows how to appoint U.S. attorneys as special counsels, given that they did that with David Weiss, who was prosecuting Hunter Biden, a U.S. appointed attorney who was confirmed by the Senate, and the same thing with Robert Hur. And you actually talk about Jack Smith in the book, and I think you detailed that Jack Smith and his wife made the documentary for Obama, Michelle Obama.
Yeah, I call it the infomercial, Becoming.
Yeah.
I refer to Jack Smith as the great expansionist, the maker of chains, the crusader of conservatives.
Right.
And in fact, I'm a government attorney, so I look at regulations. And so the DOJ regulations are published at 28 CFR. So I looked them up because the regulations for appointing for Merrick Garland or the AG to appoint a special counsel, they're on the public record. And so I looked them up. And Jack Smith doesn't even meet the standard. I mean, Merrick Garland violated his own DOJ regulations because the regulations say that you should appoint someone who has an established history of properly interpreting and applying the law. Well, that's not Jack Smith. Jack Smith was rebuked unanimously by the Supreme Court, even the liberals on the Supreme Court, for the expansive interpretation he took on the fraud statute in order to prosecute another Republican, the Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. And the Supreme Court opinion said that Jack Smith's interpretation of the law had no basis in text or history, right? That's not a guy who should be appointed as a special counsel. So I would argue that Garland even violated the DOJ regulations apart from, the constitutional arguments.
Yeah. And I think that pattern is continuing as they're filing this new brief within 60 days of the election. They're not supposed to take action. It was, according to their policy. Even Chutkin, the judge in the DC case, was saying, I don't control the DOJ and their policy. If they want to publish this big fat dossier, they can do that. And it's going to be interesting to follow. Do you have time for a quick question or two? There are some questions that came in.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's see. We got Will Crump. He just sent this one in. He says, can the judge who destroyed Trump's attorney-client privilege ever be held accountable and punished for something overtly unethical or illegal? Any thoughts on that? That's probably Beryl Howell.
That's an easy answer. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, and we get that question a lot here. Can we do anything about these judges, Judge Chutkin or any of these other judges? And it's not really, unfortunately. This one, it was a comment from Sheila Poo, says the lawfare shows that that is not entirely true. I still believe it is intentional incompetence. So talking probably about the Trump assassination.
It's a valid point. And there is some evidence of that. And so I would keep an open mind on it. And you may well be right, is what I would say.
Here's a nice comment from Glenn Croy. He's been a member of our community for 17 months. That's almost 2 full babies, which is a long time. Thanks, Rob, for this. Definitely buying this book. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. I've been going through it and marking it up. The link is down in the description below. Here's what it looks like. This is the author, Joseph B. Sweeney, here today. So grab your copy. Are you going to do an Audible of this?
I am, and I'm gonna
Awesome.
I'm gonna narrate it myself.
Cool. That's going to be great. Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's going to be great. I'll grab a copy of that too. Okay, so Sheila Poo says, this community is already smart and fully awake. Might be worse than others think, but we already know it's pretty bad. Yeah, we do know it's bad, but when you have an ex-CIA with a lawyer with 25 years who says it's even worse than we think, it's like, oh gosh.
Yeah. Now let me say, like I didn't want to write a book that just complained. I didn't write this book for fame or fortune. I did it out of a sense of duty and love of country. And it took me 2 years of working on this darn thing every day to get it out. It's like I was trapped in extended labor. But I felt that I should also, be making some recommendations of how to make things better. And I do that in the last chapter of the book. I make what I think are some very practical solutions that could be implemented and could prevent this type of thing from ever happening again, or at least go a long way towards preventing it. And so I would encourage you to look at that.
Yeah. And it's just packed with information, and you do a nice job organizing it, and it's a great read. So I highly encourage you grab a copy. And it looks like our friend Dear Emily is grabbing a copy. Says best show yet. Thank you, Dear Emily. I agree. It was amazing. Thank you both.
Another thing I'd like to add is on my website, it's sweeneyjb.com. There's a contact form, and I actually want to talk to people about these issues. And so
Cool.
I am encouraging people, reach out to me because I respond. And any aspect of the book or anything you want to chat about, even if you don't agree with me, I enjoy those talks actually more than the people who do agree with me. So please reach out and chat with me.
Amazing. And you do other podcasts. If anybody else hosts other shows or stuff, would you be willing to go on other shows to talk about your book?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing.
I told the publishers if I get an invite from an 8-person book club in East Dogbreath, Nebraska, I'm getting on a plane and I'm going out to talk to them. I want to spread the word, and I want people to read what I've written because I'm one of the few people in the world who had the experience to see things that other people would not.
Right. And yeah, you're an expert on this. We're going to be speaking next week at Davos in the Desert. There's also a link to that also down in the description below. So I think you're talking classified documents case stuff, and I'm talking the Bragg prosecution stuff. So we'll be back to back next week at Davos in the Desert as well. So we're looking forward to that. Let's see. We had a couple other comments. Marshall Stacks is saying, thank you for your relentless pursuit of the truth. I almost never post, but I've been an almost daily viewer since I was at my prior law firm after the 2020 election. So thanks, Marshall. Thanks for joining us and being here. Let's see. There was a question about, here's a good one from Sheila Poo. I want to know how the alphabet agencies can be held accountable for targeting American citizens.
So the way they get held accountable is through their inspector general's offices, who are statutorily independent offices with the authority to investigate those entities, and then also through congressional oversight. Right? Those are the two primary mechanisms. I won't lie to you and tell you that those mechanisms are robust. They're not, but they do exist, and they have done some good work. Even the DOJ IG has done some very good reports. People just don't read them because they're 400 pages long, and I've digested all of them and kind of, I panned the river for the nuggets of gold, and I put those in my book. But so those are the mechanisms: the inspector general's offices and the oversight entities in Congress. And they do work. They're not robust, but they work.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for that. And this one from Sheila says, welcome, Joe Sweeney. This community is smart. We love hearing from folks like you. Sheila's amazing. And let's see, there were a couple other comments, and then we'll let you get out of here. Thanks for sticking around and just answering a couple of these. Some great ones came in. Here's one from Stan. It says, Rob, I look at you and Joe, and my faith in the legal system is restored. Guys like you two are who should run the DOJ. Hey, okay. You're in charge. I'll be deputy. We'll take care of business once we get in there.
One of the recommendations I make in my book, there's so many nefarious things that happen through plea agreements, and all you have to do is look at the cases in the book to see that, is that a new entity be created that has oversight over all plea agreements in the federal system. And you have my vote to run it.
Amazing. Thank you for the endorsement. Yeah. Well, I'll be calling you for support on that for sure. Let's see. This one came in. That looks like a Trump question. Off-label podcast. So there's another community that runs a podcast here. So they're going to reach out to you.
Great.
And someone's asking about signed copies. Do you do anything like that at the moment? If not, that's okay.
I am signing copies left and right. I have people sending copies to my house when they buy them on Amazon. I have people sending them to me just in the mail. I'll sign a copy for anybody. I just ask them to tell me a little bit about themselves so I can personalize the message.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And here's a fun one from Patriot Rob. Why should we believe you? You're a lawyer. You work for the CIA. Just kidding. All right. He's a joke.
You know what? No, it's fair, right? And you know what I've said to a lot of people is read the book, but don't take my word for it. Don't believe something just because I told you. Do your own research. And one of the things, I haven't done this yet on my website. I got 2 years worth of research. I'm going to post it all on the website when I get around to it, so that people can check my work and they can look for themselves. So don't believe me. And I'm not even kidding. But I think I got it right, but don't take my word for it.
Yeah, I think that's a good take on it, right? Discover the truth for yourself. We're all just on the journey. We all should be questioning sources and facts and all the things until we discover what we believe is the truth. Okay, let's see. And We had a shout out to your father. John McGarvey looked up. Apparently, your father says shout out to your father. Just sending that over from John McGarvey over there. Here's one. Can Mr. Joe explain where General Milley's white rage is from? I don't know if you'll be able to explain that. I don't think so.
I don't think General Miley could even explain that.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I know it's a hard one. This old guy says, I'm reading Mr. Sweeney's book right now. I love his writing style. He's top of the line. And I thought the same thing. So I thought this was very, almost serendipitous, but I have been regularly referencing, at least on our Membo stream, when we're talking about foreign entanglements and all these foreign wars and foreign conflicts, the advice of our founders, Washington, Adams, and Jefferson, to not get involved in foreign affairs and get, entangled in all these things. And you literally start that in your book with Washington's warnings right there, right? Washington's warnings about how political party factions and how the weaponization of our government can bring the downfall of our country. And I think we're in that right now. I think we're in the middle of that right now. So I'm really glad that we got to speak with you, Joe, and that you're doing this work, doing this analysis, speaking to people about it, because I think it's exactly what we need. So thank you so much for being here. And again, one more time, where can people follow you? What's the best way to connect?
My I am not on any social media whatsoever. I'm not. So the contact form on my website, sweeneyjb.com, or if you want to buy the book, you can go directly to Amazon. I'm currently #1 bestseller for what they call law enforcement politics. So help me to stay there.
I saw that. Congratulations. I think it's a great book. It's a real service on issues that are very important. So I'm really glad that we got to talk to you about it. Thanks for coming on and hanging out with us for a bit.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Amazing, Joe. We'll stay in touch. We'll see you next week. We're going to be at Davos in the desert. We're going to be speaking there next week. So the link is down there in the description below. And then Joe, we'll see you soon. Thanks again.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, my friends. So what a treat that was. A great conversation with Joseph B. Sweeney. And if you haven't already, get the book. All right. It's on Amazon. It's linked down in the description below. You're going to see some really key details about a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about here. So I highly recommend it. I'm still parsing through it. And it's going to make its way. There are little tidbits in there that are going to make its way into our outlines and our research files, which we're working on. So good stuff there. Thanks again to Joe Sweeney. My friends, thank you for being here, for being amazing with your questions, your comments, and all your support. Let's go through some other comments. Let's see what else you guys say about this before we wrap it up on the day. And some major shout outs to Joe Sweeney. Says, great interview, Golden Gaming. Here, let's pull some of these up. Some major shout outs to Joe Sweeney. Says, great episode, no doubt about that. Great guest, great interview. One here, Just Dia, says, thank you, Joe Sweeney. Very interesting guy. Thank you, Rob. Tell me about it. Thank you, Rob. Amazing interview from Jessica. Great guest. Nice one, says Josh. Yeah, it was really, really great. So we'll be sure to stay in touch with Mr. Joe Sweeney. Let's see what else we had. Hey, Ollie. What's up, Ollie? Thanks for bringing in some new membos. So new membos just came in. 5 of them. Very nice to have 5 new membos. Welcome aboard, new friends. And I think we had, we do. We had some comments here that were being clipped from our friend Donut Mind Me in the house, modding the fort down for us. All right, let's see who's here. It's great to be with you, my friends. What a beautiful Friday. Yeah, I think Nathan Wade got served. I think Nathan Wade got served with the subpoena. So I think he'll be showing up to Congress. Oh, Nathan Wade. Oh, that sucks. All right. So what else do we have? What's up, Ollie? Bringing in new membos. We got Cowcat is in the house. Cowcat, welcome as our newest supporter in the house. We're glad to have you. Let's see what else we've got. All right, let me get my screens queued up here. Yes! Tammy Brown. What's up? Tammy Brown became a supporter. Welcome aboard, Tammy Brown. Good to see you. Rocky Water was here. Says, I'm so sure I'm going to like today's show. I'm going to risk a preemptive tip and a thumbs up. Well, I think hopefully we delivered, Rocky Water. I think it was pretty dang amazing. So hopefully it was enjoyable for you as well. Ollie's here. What's up, Ollie? Says, hey, Mr. Trump Train is coming in the house. Driama is here. Welcome. We got Gypsy, Jackie Kennedy. Wow. And Rob Jones. Gifted membos, courtesy of Ollie. Thank you, Ollie, for bringing them in. Joe, Sheila Poo says, hey, welcome, Joe Sweeney. We love you, man. The community is smart. We love hearing from smart folks like you. Hang on a second. Come on. All right. Much better there. Come on. See, my hair got fannied big time. All right. Let's see. Sheila Poo. Welcome to Joe Sweeney. We love Sheila Poo. She brought in 5 membos. James Butler, Rhonda Bennett, Gloria B, Not a Bot, and Simple Davy gifted membos, courtesy of Sheila Poo. Thank you, Sheila, for bringing them in. What's up, Eric Sean? It says the DOJ doesn't have any authority to approve or disapprove a presidential pardon. Yeah, I think that sounds right. It's a presidential power, not Merrick Garland's power. That sounds about right. Hey, James Butler is here. What's up, James Butler? Did you call? Hey, James. Bringing in 300-yard wink. Steve Lee, Chuck Helfort, Mod My Mind, Steve Clark, Tyler Graff, Angelia Green, Nathan Haynes, Brian Evans, and Big Dog Mama, courtesy of James Butler in the house. Thank you, James, for bringing in 10 new friends and 10 friends. Welcome aboard. What's up, Crash Bandit? Says, is the Democrat Party following the rules for radicals, which is accuse your opponent of what you're doing before they accuse you of it? Yeah, I think that's one thing that they're doing. And you might call it projection, but yeah, that's about right. They say Trump will prosecute his DOJ, his political opponents, as they're prosecuting Trump in 4 jurisdictions. This old guy says, while I understand that Mr. Sweeney's job was to support the cases he worked on and to protect the misuse of classified information, I really like what he stands for and wonder how he was able to publish this book. Disclaimer, I haven't yet read it, but it's next on my reading list. Yeah, I recommend it. It's good. I think you're probably asking, like, how did he get it approved? I would imagine that it went through an approval process. And we've talked about this, actually. So the approval process we talked about in the context of the Hunter Biden letter, where they submitted it to the CIA and they approved it. So I could have asked about that. Maybe we'll ask that the next time. But I think that's probably what happened. Yeah. In other words, there's probably not going to be anything in here that's not allowed by the CIA, right? He got approval, I'm sure. Bill Two Labs, what's up? Welcome aboard as a new supporter. Very nice to have you. We got Marshall Stacks. What's up, Marshall? Says, thanks for your relentless pursuit of the truth. Marshall, such a nice comment. I almost never post, but I've been almost daily viewer since when I was at R&R Law Group, our prior law firm. Shout out to the R&R crew. 2020 election BS, man. That's when we got started. COVID, man. It's the birth of the show. Hey, Eric is here. What's up, Eric? What about me gifted a membo? Kathy Chinette, Charles Stein, Chaz G, and Tiffany H gifted membos, courtesy of Eric. Hi, Eric. Hey, Pinochet's helicopter tour. Sounds like a fun time. Says, Rob, if you see this, can you ask the guest if a citizen has the right to ask the CIA through FOIA or a lawsuit? Dang it, sorry. Whether or not there exists what is known as a 2001 file, I believe, on oneself for science. I didn't see that one. All right, we'll save it for next time. Pinochet's helicopter tour. Schedule your ride today. Sheila Poo says, I want to know how the alphabet agencies can be held accountable for targeting American citizens. And he gave us a good answer on that. Lenny Malley, good to see you. Reminding us to like, subscribe, share this on all social media platforms, and God bless you all. Thank you, Lenny. God bless you back. Hey, dear Emily, best show yet. Thank you. Buy the book. Yeah, Knox is here. Happy Friday, all. I just got here halfway. This guy's blowing my mind. Shout out, right? He was great, right? Yeah, Knox is a defense attorney in Texas. That was a great conversation. I agree. Sheila Poo, what's up? We are smart. We do know it's bad. But guess what? It's even worse. That's great. Hey, Glenn Croy. Thanks, Rob, for this. Definitely buying this book. We had this one from Spencer Reed. What's up, Spencer? Thanks for becoming a supporter. Great to see you. Sheila Poo. Yeah, that was a great answer on that. Intentional incompetence, right? Seems about right. This one came in from Ines Fod. Says, what a brilliant guest. Can't wait to read this book. Thanks, Rob. What a brilliant guest. Can't wait to read this book. Thanks, Rob. From Ines Fad. It was brilliant. It was very good comment. This old guy says, the deep state has a real issue to deal with when Trump is elected. CBS, ABC, MSNBC, CNN together aren't big enough to hire all of them as contributors. There just aren't enough media jobs to absorb all of them. I can't wait for that to happen. Yes. Well, I can't wait for all that to happen. Like, maybe alternative media is going to crush new media. New media is going to crush old media. I think that's probably right. Hey, here's one. Dang, thanks for all the insight, Joe. I hope you can bless watching the watchers with your presence and comments on current events from your perspective. Much more going forward. I will certainly need to check out your book. And is this like a little AI image of CIA agent Joe Sweeney, CIA agent Sweeney? I mean, that's pretty cool, actually. Up there on the, you can see that as a big painting up there, you know, in his entryway. You walk into Joe Sweeney's house. Whoa! He's like, welcome to my house. I like it. Hey, I don't know if we'll be into that or not, but maybe we would. Hey, Will, what's up? Can the judge who destroyed Trump's attorney-client privilege ever be held accountable? The answer, no. Patriot Rob. He says, no investigation on whether or not he sold any top secret information over the past 50 years. It's strange, isn't it? Yeah, talking about Biden. It is very strange. They just forgot about that, but they're prosecuting Trump. Hey, John, did you read the book for the audio version? Says John. Yeah, he's going to. So I guess he's working on that now. Bodie, there is no audio version right now, right? No, I think he's working on it. Bodie, what's up? Says, why are they doing all this to Trump? I think we got to the idea that they just don't like him. They just don't like the guy. B.H. Williams says, hypothetically, Congress could dissolve the D.C. District Court and modify their jurisdiction. No. Yes, that is theoretically right. And that was a big proposal from Newt Gingrich. I remember that. He wanted to dissolve the Ninth Circuit. And I thought that was a good one. Patriot Rob says, why should we believe you? Who are you kidding? You're a CIA lawyer. Just kidding. It's a funny comment, Patriot Rob. He even laughed at that. Here's one from Larry. Says, can Comey, Biden, or Clinton be charged after Trump wins the election? Yeah, for sure. Presumably, as long as the statute of limitations for whatever the charges are hasn't elapsed, which they might have. But then you just charge it as a RICO conspiracy and just bundle it up into an ongoing conspiracy and just make it up. And you hire somebody like Jack Smith to do it, to prosecute it. He'll do it. Hey, Voice of the People says, I'll definitely hit him up for off-label podcasts. Yeah, do it, man. He's great to talk to. It's going to be awesome. How do we get a signed copy? So send him an email, contact info on the website. Nice T says, thank you, Mr. Sweeney, for being on Rob's show. Yeah, that was amazing and great. And make sure you grab his book. Simple Davey says, off-label podcast will be in touch soon, baby. Whew, it's going to be great. Stan Cottrell, thank you for the nice encouragement. Yeah, and it's very nice to have guys like Sweeney out there who can come out and explain things from a very expert, a very different but an expert perspective. Larry, what's up? Says, Trump's financials, here's government account and budget sleight of hand. 50 states accumulated nearly $1 trillion in retirement obligations, not reported on balance sheets. Actual $67 trillion. Gosh. Yeah, our bank account is really not good. 51K says, watching the FBI whistleblower testify to Congress the other day, I wonder if there are more of you over there at the former employer or the FBI, at the CIA or FBI. Do you think they've done a good job of scaring them into silence? That's interesting. Yeah, you almost never see CIA whistleblowers. That's another good point, right? CIA doesn't come in to beg for money or respond to anything. And there's not really any whistleblowers. Curious. Hey, Tyler, I would absolutely love to know Joe's opinion on the idea that Podesta, so it must be John or one of the other Podestas, is the biological dad of Chester Bennington, and that he really didn't off himself. I don't know that one at all. So Chester Bennington, is he the Lincoln Park guy? I don't know what's going on, Tyler. Very interesting question. Yeah, here's my response. What? What are you talking about? Hey, Operation Mockingbird from Fred Pedamonte is a thing. This old guy says, reading Mr. Sweeney's book right now. I love his writing style. He's top of the line. He's got great quotes that he weaves in from Voltaire and from Washington and others. Yeah, this is a great question. And no, we don't, no one knows the answer to this. This is one of the universal mysteries. Rob, can Mr. Joe explain where General Milley's white rage is from? No, I don't know. Or why roads are so racist? I would like a debate on these and other questions that are the defining issues in our country right now. No, it's a mystery. But we should dedicate probably a couple universities to solving that. Why is Milley so filled with white rage? I don't know. I'm not. I don't know what his problem is. But apparently he needs to figure it out. Because of Trump or something. All right, crafting with bits. Have you heard of the Rescue the Republic event in D.C. this Sunday? I have not. Dark Horse Podcast, I have heard of them, yes. Would be awesome if you guys connected. I'd love to connect with them. Yeah, Dark Horse Crew. I know that podcast. Heck yeah. But no, I didn't know that they were doing an event in DC this Sunday. Yeah, I'm down to get out and about. I think we're going to hang out with Joe on Sunday, by the way. So I think Joe, good logic. I think we're hanging out with him on Sunday. Let me confirm this here. While we're here. All right. Yes. Let's see what this looks like. Yes, we're going to come hang out with Joe on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Good Logic is getting started on Sunday. So we're getting out there. Have you heard of that? I have not heard that. So I will not be getting out there at that event. We'll be hanging out with Joe on Sunday. Hey, what's up? Francis says, can you confirm with me about something? I had a disagreement with my public defender lawyer friend. Did Jack Smith offer Trump's attorney a judgeship? If so, is that illegal? So it's nuanced. It's not exactly that. Jack Smith couldn't offer Trump's lawyer a judgeship because it's not his to give. But the attorney was named Stanley Woodward, and he was representing Walt Nauta, which is Trump's number 2. And yes, the attorney was, and you can tell this to your public defender lawyer friend if you'd like to, tell him I said that Jay Bratt for Jack Smith's office was in a meeting with Walt Nauta and his lawyer, Stanley Woodward, and the prosecutor, Jay Bratt, told the defense attorney that he thought that he was playing ball or something and that he wouldn't want anything to jeopardize his judgeship. And that's according to a complaint from the defense that came up at a meeting. So in other words, Woodward, the lawyer, had applied to become a judge, and the prosecutor was putting pressure on him, get your client to flip on us or else you're going to lose your judgeship. So it wasn't Jack Smith's ability to give them a judgeship, but he was going to go put in a bad word at I think it was the DC Superior Court. So those are the names. You can look it up. Stanley Woodward, Walt Nauta was the defendant. The prosecutor was Jay Bratt, and Jay Bratt's a piece of work. All right. Hey, what's up? Don, 8 months as a membo. Almost one more. We got then a full baby in the house. Says, thanks, Rob and Joe. Great show. Tell me about it. We're thanking Joe today. I had nothing to do with it. Hey, what's up? Don't mind me. Says, I like these interviews. You know, it adds some variety. Thank you. Don't mind me. I agree. They're pretty fun. It's good to talk to people and learn new things. It's good. That was a great one, man. It's a great book. It's super cool to be able to talk to him. So that's fun. Thank you, Donut. We've got this one from Sheila Pooh, bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Sheila. Look who's here. Michael O'Grady, Donald French. We got Ungoliant. Will Crump is in the house. And Puppet 2 is in the house. We've got this one. Here's Cheers to Bob. Cheers to Bob. Bobsco. What's up, Bobsco? Bobsco's bringing in 1 new membo. Welcome aboard, Carla Miles. Great to have you, and thank you, Bobsco. Bodie says, trying to spread the word on X. You'll probably chuckle next time you get on X. Okay, we're going to do that here in a quick second. Stan Cottrell says, hey, just ordered Joe's book. There is a Kindle version too. Yeah, I saw that. I wanted the hard copy so that I could show it on the screen. and say, look how sophisticated I am. I have tabs in my book. Look, I'm a good student. I actually opened it up. That's why, just so you'd all be proud of me and know that I read something inside of it. Hey, what's up? Simple Davy says, thank you for all that you do. Great job. Thank you, Simple Davy, for being here, for being a membo for so long, for supporting us. Really appreciate it, my man. Thank you for that. We got E. Texley. What's up? Says the DOJ has an office that reviews potential pardons. Justice.gov/pardon. Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. And I'm sure they weigh in and they gave, this is the length that has been served and so on. And they give, an assessment and they tell them. But I mean, if Trump said, or if a president says, I'm pardoning that person, and they say, well, we don't recommend it, the president can say, I don't really care what you have to say because I'm the president. Hey, what about me? 2 babies in the house, 2 brats worth of watcher membos pour moi. Thank you, Eric. 2 brats worth of watcho membos pour moi. Thank you, Eric. Oh gosh, did I turn into highlighter girl? Oh gosh, I've just become highlighter girl. Molly Gaston from DC, Voice of the People, just called me a highlighter girl. He might be onto something. What's happening? Hey, Sergeant says, I've really been enjoying these last few interviews that you've done. Looking forward to more. Thank you, Sergeant, for the good feedback, my man. Thank you. Yeah, they're fun. I'm having fun talking to these people and learning new stuff and not listening to my own self. It's too much of Rob. Way too much. Zone Girl says, FYI, traveled 11 states over the last month. I saw 2 Harry Wall signs and many Trump Vance signs. Also, Rob, have you been to a pizza place in Golden Valley? Great pizza and all in on Trump. You need to visit, Rob, right on the highway going towards Laughlin. I'll post pictures tomorrow. Thanks for Sweeney for an interview. He's a natural. He is amazing. He is great. Yeah, no, I don't think I've actually been there, but I love pizza, so that sounds great. Golden Valley sounds like it might be a little far for a quick pizza, but on the way to Laughlin, that sounds like an awesome suggestion. Thank you, Zone Girl. Mr. Trump Train says, hey, please sound like Joe Biden today. Please pray for residents from North Carolina to Newport. 10 months as a member. Thank you, Mr. Trump Train. Yeah, and prayers to our friends in Florida, North Carolina, on the East Coast. I know they got hit hard with a hurricane, and so we're hopeful that things are calming down and everybody is safe. ELZ says, when Trump gets sworn in, I think he should make a movie of himself going around Washington, D.C. and saying, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. Like, afuera, 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 afuera. Dozens and dozens of times. Tyler says, just look at a side-by-side of John Podesta and Chester Bennington. Oh, then throw in a picture of Lawrence Rockefeller, too. I'll put it on locals. I have no idea. I've not heard of that one at all. Says, second time trying this one. First one got nuked. Just look up John Podesta next to Chester. Oh, and L. Rockefeller, too. It's a crazy resemblance. That's funny. I haven't heard of that. But I do believe that there's probably like 100 different models of humans. Like, that's it. Like 100 different versions. And then you can change them like in a video game. Like you can change like the facial features and stuff. And the skin color and all that. Height and weight and all that. But, more or less there's like 100 models. And then, like in a video game, you get a pre-start. Select one of these. So we all start from that. Then we make some colors, height, weight, changes, skin color, all the things. But there's about 100 of us. And that's it. Yeah, so that sounds right. Hey, Crafting with Bits says, check out Rescue the Republic. RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Dark Horse. Sorry for being a bit spammy, but no, it's not spammy at all. It sounds great. I haven't heard of it. Just wanted to let you know it's a big event calling out exactly the corruption you cover so well. Yeah, it sounds great. I have not even heard of it, but I should, and I will take a look at it. It's coming up this weekend. I know there's another big one. Public Square is happening, I think, in Florida, October 10th, but I've got some other events coming up. I've got a couple other, group events that I'm scheduled for. Walland Quist. What? Walind Quist in the house. What's up? Says a longtime lurker, big fan, love today's show. Thank you. Thank you for that. Walind Quist in the house. Thank you for that. Thanks for the nice dono, and it's great to see you. I'm usually a lurker too, so thanks for popping in the chat and saying hello and for being here today. Tyler says, okay, this is the third time I'm trying this. Just look at Podesta and Bennington and Rockefeller, okay? I had to code this one to get past the censors. It's funny because they all came through. But I think I know who you're talking about now. So Rockefeller, Bennington, and Podesta. That's hilarious. It's just not showing you. It worked last time, Tyler, says Shane. Tyler says, it's worth the $15 if it charges all of them. It's true. It's funny. It's really funny. Thank you, Tyler. Thanks for supporting us, man. Thanks for sending in the donos. And look it up. Dang it. Look it up. Here's a couple people who look alike. I think it's the same person, from Tony DeMarco, Tony D over on Locals. It's weird how things happen. It's like, you see a celebrity like 20 years later, they used to play that kid in that movie, and now they've grown up. The same thing happened here. Tim Walz is a whole new person. And what's up? Ike's Girl says, Rob, Candace Owens. Oh, and this one was one too. I think, did we get this one? From Amber. You guys got to go check out Candace Owens uncovering the truth about Kamala lying about her family. Candace saying she is not black. It's crazy. Love your channel. I've seen some of that on Candace. I saw her ex post about that, actually. That's very interesting. I'm glad she's digging into that because there's a lot to be revealed there, no doubt. Ike's Girl sent this one too. Rob, Candace found something about Kamala's heritage, maybe false, but check it out. Something about Irish and India grandparents. Yeah, and something about a birth certificate date and fake photos or something. Strange behavior from their side when it comes to this stuff. All right, let's see who's joining us on X. Then we're going over to Locals for our members only after party. We'd love to have you come over there and join us. Members, we do Saturday streams, which means tomorrow we're going to be back here in the morning to get into it again. And we're looking forward to it. Oh, man. Did you guys see this? I stepped away from the camera for 1 second. 1 second. And the feds invaded. Look. They're here. They're clogging the tubes. They're blowing up our water pipes. They're infesting the studio. Is that the CIA? All right. That's from our meme smith, Paul Me Now. I'll keep my eye out. He says, did the glowies get to you? Say it ain't so. We're in. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, what's going on? Batorn is in the house. Nothing can stop what's coming, says Batorn Anubis. Talking about trusting the CIA. And I think the answer to that is, yeah, don't trust the CIA. But you can think about what people are saying and does it make logical sense, right? Can you deduce truth from the conversation? So I wouldn't even ask you to trust me, right? It's like, well, you should just listen to what I'm saying. Like, does it make sense? Does the document match? Do you think it resonates? But ultimately, yeah, question everything, right? I like to question everybody. Always. Except my mama. Because she's awesome. All right, what's up? Shakes. I just watched yesterday's video. I need to know how in the world Democrats get to say anything in hearings when you walk out. Yeah, they walked out. Yeah, they walked out. It's like a big joke. Congress is like a big joke, Yeah. I think trust is good, right? We are trying to build trust. We're trying to create rapport and develop a community. And you really can't develop a community without some semblance of trust. But I'm not saying that nobody should outsource their critical thinking anywhere, ever, at all. And when big issues come up that we have to pause and think about, we should then do that with discernment always. And I think that's a big lesson that came out of the pandemic and these last few years, is that the people who claim to be caring for you are not, and in fact doing the exact opposite. And there's a pattern that exists. And so one of the ways that we insulate ourselves against the problems from those corrupt individuals is by not relying and taking their words for it. Nullius in verba, right? Take no one's word for it. Trust no one. And then deduce for yourself. Does it make sense for yourself? Yeah, that's great. Unless it's your mama. Trust your mama, because we love our mama. All right, so let's see what else we've got. That was over on X. We've got some friends over on Locals. That's the plan. We are going over to Locals. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is where we're heading right now. New membos on YouTube. You can always join us on Telegram. Go over to the community tab section on the YouTube app. Grab the community link tab. Grab the Telegram link. And then we'll see you over there on Telegram. But otherwise, my friends, it has been a heck of a week. Thank you so much for being here, going through it all with us. We are very grateful for you joining us when we go live. And we're going to be back here next week to get into it again. And so, in order to do that properly, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. An amazing weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.